Brooding is the most difficult part when it comes to poultry farming. That's how very many people out there they think brooding is. But in today's video, I'm actually going to be giving you tips on how you can brood your chicks successfully without losing any of them so that brooding can become easy and then you can, wear in that mentality that brooding is also easy. So guys, get ready for the video. Some of you are still hearing this word brooding for your first time, or you have heard it but you don't know what it means. In fact, brooding is the taking care of a chick right from the day it is hatched until it has now fully grown up its feathers. At this stage, you are going to be the mother of that chick. You need to supply everything needed for a chick to actually grow smoothly. You need to provide it with water, feeds, and then the big one is that you need to also supply it with warmth. As we all know, just take a look at these local chickens. Immediately they hatch, the chicks, they enter into the feathers of their mother or the hen. But in this case, the chicks don't have their mother. So you need to act as their mother and then provide anything needed for them to actually have it very well. So the first thing is that before you even brooding your birds, the source of your birds matters a lot. The breed of your birds, in other words. Once you have now brought a breed of birds which is of poor quality, then definitely, even if you brood your birds very well, you are still going to lose your birds because the source or the breed of the birds is not well. So I suggest that before you even bringing in your birds into your poultry farm, make sure that you do thorough research on the breed of the birds that you want to bring into your poultry farm. That way, even if you bring in your birds, the birds will be very strong with strong immunity and they can resist most of the things on your poultry farm. But once you have gotten the birds of poor quality, poor breeds, guys, even if you try as much as possible, the birds still won't make it. Let me assume that the parent stock of the birds that you have brought into your poultry farm have been infected with a disease. That means that that disease can also inherit to the what? The chick which is produced. So even if you bring in your chicks, just like day old chicks, inside them, there will be diseases inherited from their parents. So make sure that you do thorough research on the breed of the birds before bringing them into your poultry farm. That way, brooding your birds will be also super cool. And then number two is that before bringing in your birds, try to calculate the distance from the hatchery to your poultry farm. How far is the distance between those two? Because most poultry farmers, they actually get birds from a hatchery and then they travel long distance with these birds, especially by road transport. If by air transport, there is no problem over there. But if by road transport, there are also certain things that you need to see over there so that your birds will also be very good when it comes to brooding them. The certain things that you should look at is the roads. How is the roads? Is the roads good? Is the road smooth? And then, other things like weather also can also affect your brooding. So make sure that the distance covered, you calculate it very well because a chick can actually stay up to 20-25 hours without dying. Make sure that within this time, your chicks arrive at your poultry farm safely. And more so if you are like driving them using road transport, make sure that after every 30 minutes, you check on these birds and then you will reach at your poultry farm very well. And if you are to rush, remember these birds are still young and then their bones are still weak. So you may actually break very many birds and then on top of that, the birds will also die because of the roads, bumpy roads, and then all those stuffs. So make sure that you take it smooth. If you want to transport your chicks from one place to another, in case there are very many, make sure that you actually get a transport of your own. What do I mean? You should hire a vehicle of your own. Don't actually use these public vehicles whereby or buses in that case, because at some point they can actually break and then it is very difficult for you to actually be stopping buses time and again. Let us check on my chicks. No, guys, the next one is that make sure that your brooder, the brooder is where the brooding is going to take place. So make sure that the brooder is set 1 to 2 weeks before you bring in your birds. What do I mean by this? Make sure that you put litter in the brooder. Make sure that you put brooder papers in the brooder. Make sure that you have stoves. I don't know which kind of electricity or which kind of source of heat you're actually going to use, but make sure that it is set before you bring in your birds, and then all things are actually functioning. You have the water ready. You must have water with glucose and then vitamins inside it, and then immediately the birds arrive, the brooder, like I said earlier, should be ready to accommodate these birds. And on top of this, what I can tell you is that when you want to brood your chicks, try as much as possible to actually get a different room from the poultry house where you're actually going to be raising the birds. As we all know, a standard poultry house has ventilations on both sides. If you are like to brood your birds inside that kind of structure, guys, it is very difficult for you to retain the heat inside the house. Very difficult. I suggest that you actually get a room, a small room, where you will be actually brooding your birds for 1 month if layers, and then for 2 weeks if broilers. And then after this, you can now transfer your birds or the chicks from the brooder where you brooded them into their main house where they will be staying. That is to cut the cost that you will be spending in the sources of heat. The warmth is the priority. And then if you are to actually put them in a house whereby there are very many ventilations, then retaining the heat alone will be a problem. That's why you see some people, they spend much money in the sources of heat during brooding. It's because the houses that they use, they actually make the heat escape away time and again. So do this and it will cut your cost as well. And then the next one is that make sure that the water that you give to your birds is clean water. Clean water. And then on top of that, make sure that it contains glucose and then vitamins. Glucose is actually given to birds to actually strengthen them. And then vitamins we actually give them to actually give them appetite to feed. We are supposed to actually give them feeds after 1 to 2 hours depending on the distance covered and then the stress which they have. You can now introduce the feeds, and then on top of that also, guys, make sure that your feeders and then the drinkers, they are everywhere. We should not use this standard of 1 to 40. 1 drinker per 40 chicks. No. Try as much as possible to make the drinkers and then the feeders very much so that it is also easy for the birds to access them at any time they want. But if you make them insufficient, it will be very, very hard for these birds to access them. And then of course you will be having brooder papers. Scatter the feeds in the brooder paper so that the birds can eat them from there. And then after 4 to 5 days, that's when you can introduce the pan feeders or the kind of feeders that you want these birds to use. So basically, that's how you should do it when you want your birds to actually grow well during the brooding stage. And then the next one, which is the main core in brooding the chicks, is the warmth of the birds or the temperature of the house. Now, how are we going to estimate this? I actually advise that if possible, you get a thermometer where you will be putting it in the house, in the brooder house. That way you can actually see the temperature of the house from the thermometer. That way you will know whether the house is very hot or very cold. But if you cannot afford a temperature, then I suggest that you must see how the birds behave all the time. If the birds are, stuck together, it means that the house is cold or the heat is not enough. But if the birds are scattered very well, that means that the temperature is right for the birds. And then when it comes to feeding these birds, even if you are a master in mixing poultry feeds, do not mix these poultry feeds at this stage. I suggest you actually get the ready-made feeds in pellet form and then give them to these birds, like for a week, and then after that, you can start mixing your poultry feeds. At this stage, we want the birds to actually get the required nutrients for them at their stage. So if we are to mix the feeds, at some point we may mix feeds having less quality or quantity of ingredients inside it, and it will affect the growth of our birds. Let us try to go for the ones which are already mixed with the right quality and then quantity of the ingredients needed into them. That way the birds will put on the feathers also very fast, and then their growth will be smoothly. So that's on the issue of the poultry feeds when it comes to the brooding of these birds. Before we move to the last one, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, because if up to this time you have not yet subscribed to the channel and you are still watching, guys, it's not good. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to like the video. That one like is very important to me. And then turn on your bell notification. That way you'll be notified immediately I drop any kind of video on the channel. My name is Jacob, a farmer as always in poultry keeping, giving you updates on the things that we actually find as problems in the poultry business. So if you are interested in doing poultry, stay tuned on the channel. A lot is still coming just for you. And then the last one is the vaccines, which you need to vaccinate your birds. Of course, there is Merex vaccine, which is given at the hatchery, so you don't need to repeat that. But after that, there are other small vaccines which you need to do them, guys, so that your birds can actually grow well. Do not skip any vaccine, guys. Do not skip any vaccine. If the vaccine is supposed to be given this week, make sure that you give the vaccines. Even if your birds are actually looking fine, moving on smoothly, give the vaccine to them, because there are other poultry farmers which they notice their birds that my birds are fine, there is no need of me giving them the vaccines, and yet that is a problem. So never do that. Never do that. Things like vaccines, these are things that you personally, you actually know very well that you need to be following them. And then things like the biosecurity of your farm must be very strict. Inside the brooder, you should be the only person. Or if there is only one person keeping these birds, let only that one person get in and then out of that brooder. Not any person can enter into that brooder, because at this stage, these birds are very weak. So the moment a disease is introduced, the birds can die. And the bad thing with poultry is that when a disease breaks out, the birds die in high number. Out of 100 birds, you can lose 80 birds just in 2-3 days. So make sure that you take this as something very important. The biosecurity of your poultry farm, take it very serious. Otherwise, thanks for watching. See you in my next video.